amended budget. It eventually got approved, just 11 months later. So. And so, in summary, working with Vicki and John and Brian, that was really good. Books were in really good shape, and the records were orderly, and everything was approved. It goes through accounts payable, and so we feel good about the processes that are in place. So, with that said, let me jump to page 18. See, we've already completed 17 pages. Just to highlight, page 18, there's 3 funds, governmental funds for the city, the general funds, the capital projects fund, where all the savings is at, and then the debt service fund. The general fund had about 2.8 million of assets. It had approximately 1.7 million of debt and other liabilities for a fund balance of 1.1 million. And I'll touch on that. That's in good shape. The capital projects fund had about 6.5 million of assets and about 1.1 million of liabilities for a fund balance of 5.4 million. That was also an improvement from the prior year. And then the debt service fund, it had about $156,000 in cash without any liabilities. So there's plenty of assets, and I'll show you in the next page how the financial condition of the city is improved over the fiscal year that leads up to those numbers. So on page 19, there were total revenues of about, 545. There's total revenues about 7.3 million. The bulk of the revenue comes from property and sales tax and other franchise taxes. Property taxes were up about 170,000 from the year. Sales taxes were up about 270,000 for the year. So it's nice to see a growth there. And then there's charges for services, which is a slew of everything from the pool to the golf course to park rentals and whatnot. So total revenues were 7.3. Total expenditures, broken out by department or by grouping. Total expenditures were 5.4 million, leaving an excess of approximately 1.9 million. And there were some other small contributions towards the bottom. In light of that large excess that it had, it transferred about 2.3 million in change to the capital projects fund, because that fund was busy during the year improving the streets and chipping and sealing and doing all those larger projects. So it did decrease the fund balance, but only because of that transfer. So there was on that third row from the bottom, there was a decline of about 426,000. The capital projects fund, it received some grant revenues and some interest earnings for approximately 1.5 million. It expended approximately 2.1 million, and it was in the middle of all those projects. Ryan and John, you want to add anything to that? I think there's some carryover from, because this is June 30th, and a lot of those projects were just ongoing throughout the summer. So some of them were not completed. It received transfers in from the general fund of just over 2.1 million. It borrowed $160,000. Was that for a sidewalk or street project?
It's for the 2018 road project.
Road.
That we received from CIB.
Okay. And then it sold some fixed assets for $18,700. So it had total other financing of 2.3 million and change, leaving an increase in the fund balance of 1.7 million. So its funded balance increased from almost 3.7 million up to 5.4 million. So pretty healthy increase on that. The debt service fund, which is the third column, it had some charges for services because it receives a payment to make from another entity to help make a loan payment that's conduit debt. And then it had its loan payments for 217. It had enough cash that it didn't need to do an operating transfer to help, but it opted to do that anyway. So it had before the operating transfer, it had a deficit of 173,000. It received 174,000 from the general fund for a net change or a net increase in the fund balance of 2,000. So that fund stayed about equal. That was pretty fast. Any questions? Okay.
You're doing great.
Okay, let's get the next 2 pages because we're really thrilling. The next few pages are reconciliations between two different formats, and we're sticking to the simplest, the most simple format. Page 22 and 23 are the water, sewer, and the sanitation fund. Both of these funds did really well. Both, for the most part, increased their financial condition by a pretty good increase. And so the current assets were about $3.4 million in the water fund, which was an improvement. The sewer fund had about $1.8 million in current assets, and most of that is in cash. It had some long-term assets that aren't available for expenditure because they're water and sewer systems, and there's nothing there you can sell to generate cash. It had current liabilities of $303,000, and about halfway down now. And when you compare that to the current assets, that's like a 10-to-1 ratio, and so that's excellent. So, which means you have about 10 times the amount of cash that you do than you do liabilities. It had total long-term liabilities of about $2.3 million, which is your long-term debt and your net pension liability. So total debt and other liabilities were just over $2.6 million. You compare all the liabilities of the water fund to just its current assets, and you have $1 million more in current assets, and you do all liabilities and debt. And so that's really good, really good. The sewer fund was not quite as good as financial shape as the water, but it's been growing substantially starting about 4 or 5 years ago, and I have a graph regarding that. Total current assets, which was mostly cash, of about $1.8 million. There, about the 5th row from the top, there's restricted cash. It's also had about $570,000 of restricted cash, which has been earmarked for debt service, and it's not available for spending, and that's to follow bond covenants. It has liabilities. It had current liabilities of $270,000, which is about a sixth of, less than a sixth of what the current assets are. So once again, great financial condition. It does have quite a bit more debt than the water fund, and it's because of the larger, more recent projects that have been necessary in the community. So total liabilities there were just over $4 million. So it had about just under $2 million in current assets and $4 million in debt. But that ratio has been improving significantly over the years, and we'll talk about that in a graph. So once again, the sewer fund showed quite a bit of improvement. On page 23 is the is the income statement, where we show the revenues and the expenses. Total operating revenues for the water were just over $2.8 million. Its expenditures, including depreciation, was extremely similar, almost $2.9 million. So it had about a $48,000 loss. It collected impact fees and some interest income, and then it paid its debt. It had an interest on long-term debt of $7,000. And so when you factor in those other non-operating income and expense items, and then you add a $290,000 grant, the water fund had a net income, on the third row from the bottom, it had a net income of about $301,000. So that was also an improvement. The sewer fund was similar. It had revenues of just over $1 million. It had operating expenses of $866,000. It had other items that improved its net position, and then it only had a small grant of $3,183 for a total change in net position of $232,600. So once again, it also improved. And the statement of cash flows next will be a really good picture on how that's doing cash-wise. Sanitation fund, by design, it's meant to break even, and it did. It had a net income of $1. So, page 24 is a statement of cash flow, and it factors in loan payments, improvements on the systems, and it also removes depreciation, which is a non-cash expense. So it does this in 4 categories: operating, non-capital financing, and then capital and related financing, and then investing. The most important is that the operating activities of these 2 funds, or 3 funds, cover the system improvements and the loan payments. The water fund generated a surplus of cash there in that top section of $586,700. It had some change in customer deposits and interfund balances of a surplus of $10,642. In that third section, It received grants for $653,000, which raised cash. It received impact fees of about $60,000. Now, it spent most of the grants and then some on capital improvements, $677,000, so that's going out. It had loan payments and interest of a combined $125,000, the 118 and the 7. So combining all those factors, it had a deficit of $88,000, $89. And then there was interest earnings in that last section. So all in all, the operating activities is well in excess of what your loan payments are, approximately 5 to 1. So you're bringing in more than enough money to cover your annual loan payments, and then it does give you about $400,000 to $500,000 to make improvements without reducing cash and without going to getting lending or borrowing from the bank. So, a significant project obviously would require borrowing, like you talked about with Ryan, but otherwise you can make some pretty good improvements without borrowing and still maintaining your cash balance. Total ending cash towards the bottom was just over $3.4 million in the water fund. The sewer fund, it generated $286,000 of operating cash. It also had some capital improvement activity. It received some miscellaneous income of $68,000. It spent almost $220,000 on capital improvements. Its loan payments are nearly double the water fund, so it had about $243,000 of loan payments, which is just under what its operating cash balance is. And so it's also generating enough cash to make its own loan payments. And then it had some interest earnings. But for the year, unfortunately, the improvements that it did without borrowing were slightly more than what the operating cash flow surplus was. So there was a net decrease in cash of about $80,000, which in my impression is quite small compared to the overall cash balance. So it had about $2.2 million. Any questions on that, guys?
Which is the drainage fund? Aren't we raising, which does it go to?
The sewer and drain?
Yes, the water. The water. Thank you.
Before we move on, because that pretty much summarizes everything, let's go to my little graph. There's just 3 pages. The first page is the governmental funds, which is the general fund and the capital projects fund and the debt service fund, and it's about a 9-year comparison, and you can see there's 2 graphs there, and then there's the numbers that back it up. But I use what cash is on hand, and then I subtract out the debt applicable to those funds. And then I look at what kind of annual expenses there are of the city, excluding water and sewer and garbage. And the amount of available resources to the town compared to what its annual expenses are is improving each year. And that's what we want to see, meaning your financial conditions improving faster than what your annual expenses are improving. So for 2019, your available assets were 107% of your annual operating expenses, 1.07. And so, yeah, there's inflation in your expenses, but your surplus is more than what your expenses are growing. And so we can see some gradual improvement. 2014 was from 2014 to 2015 was rocky, and then since then, it's shown steady improvement. And then available assets compared to long-term debt. You can see when you borrowed money to complete the swimming pool, it took a nosedive, and then it's been inching upwards pretty steadily, honestly, since 2016. So that's, if you want to look at how the financial condition of the city is, you don't have this graph. Apologize. The next page is the water, and it's kind of similar circumstances, available assets. I take your cash and receivables less your debt, and your available assets are around 3.4 million compared to last year. They were about 3 million, and you can see that your available assets compared to your operating expenses improved 5% on the year. Previous year was a 10% improvement. Before that, it was 14%. So just some nice steady growth. As the numbers get larger, the percentages trim down because it's harder to grow as the numbers get larger. And then available assets compared to long-term debt. As your cash and whatnot improve and your debt goes down, that ratio improves dramatically. So your available assets compared to long-term debt are about 180%, which is excellent. Might not make the CIB very happy, but it would go in there. The next is the sewer fund, where we see a little more of the same. Available assets are approximately just under 2.1 million, and annual expenses are around 875,000. There was quite a big, you can see there towards the middle of the page, annual expenses, towards the bottom of them, that numbers up top. Right above the, so third row from the bottom on the graph, not on the graph, on the chart. Annual expenses have usually been in the high 700s. For 2019, the annual expenses did increase to about 874,000, which is about an $80,000 increase. That being said, the revenues and available assets to the sewer fund also improved significantly, and so the ratio improved despite the overall expenses increase. So available assets to operating expenses was 239% compared to 216%. So another marked improvement. And then available assets compared to long-term debt, it went from 45% to 59%. And so it's not nearly as flush as the water fund, but it improved on it a lot during the year. So maybe that was a goal of John and Ryan since they started here, and they've been chipping away at it pretty good. That pretty much concludes.
Mike, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
You took 15 of those 20 minutes.
Yeah. Complimentary for management and that. I really think it's wonderful.
And I thought of this driving over. I can paint a rosy picture financially, but if the condition of the, and I don't have an opinion on this, if the condition of the city deteriorates, it can be kind of concealed. You can make yourself look good by not fixing the roads. You know, does that make sense?
Yes.
So, and I have no idea on that, but so anyway, but financially, it's looking like this.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions?
The street in front of his house, but doesn't know.
I'm trying to be objective. And it was not paved, it was covered. Preserved, yes.
It's the best the Northeast has looked for 40 years.
Yeah, we've had,
Roads and stuff.
yeah, and we had a super rundown trailer hauled off, so we're thrilled to death. One less places for the mice to live in. You know about that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Any questions for our auditors from the council? Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on. We have two.
We would ask you to make a motion to accept this.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, I'd entertain a motion to accept the audit.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilman Burdick,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilman Baird. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that reminder. We'll turn some time to Carolyn. I understand you have the petitions.
That is my mission.
Wonderful. Lee, would you come address us and we'll
Get more and more of these fun assignments going
Look
right
at our-
here. So the first one, what we need from you on these, this is the initial petition for annexation. We're introducing this to you. We need you tonight to approve us to move forward with this process. We've been through several annexations. You know, this is quite a long process. This is the first step in that. So this first one, the Clayton Miller annexation, he is constructing a home for Craig Labrum and is seeking a city water connection because this piece of property does border the city. We have asked that he annex in order to get that connection. So this is the lot that they are looking to annex in. I believe it is above Clayt's current home. And this is where they're looking to build. So we're seeking your approval to proceed with that annexation.
super. So question I'd have, the property to the north of that proposed parcel is Roosevelt City annexation boundaries, correct? Okay.
Yes.
North or south?
What's that?
North, it comes around.
Or south?
Comes around and the top is, he's the south, that. So it's where it comes up, this gray line right here is the city. So it comes around, jogs over, and he's just right below there. So it is kind of odd, but yes, the north, his north boundary is city. So
Any questions from the council on moving forward with this petition to annex?
Do we need motions on each of the one? I
We
make
do.
a motion that we move, proceed.
Thank you. Councilman Labrum, a motion? And a second?
I second.
Okay, and a second by Councilman White. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Want to go on to the
I do.
Todd and Debbie
So
Arnold
the next
property.
one we're looking at is the Todd and Debbie Arnold property. They have just moved to the Cottonwood Creek subdivision. And Todd serves on the Roosevelt Fire Department. In order to remain on the fire department, they need to annex into the city. And he's also expressed some of the financial benefits that come along with annexation into the city. So they're looking to annex their property as well. And I believe that this borders the mayor's property. So they are looking to annex into the city. Is that correct? Does
yeah,
this
the
border the mayor?
blue line is the city line, and so he would border that blue line. So actually it's on his southwest side. So, and they have talked to some of the other ones, and to see if there were others who were interested in signing in. They're coming in on their own, but it is there adjacent to it.
There is an existing home there they bought, is that
Yes.
what I mean?
Are there any complexities where that is a divided lot in a subdivision with any codes and covenants in that subdivision we need to be aware of that would have any type of restriction with one coming in and others not? That's my only question I would have.
We would look at it through the process of the annexation process, and probably bring up anything if there was. We're not
Super.
aware of any at this point.
It'd be fantastic to have them as part of the city. Any questions from the council? If not, would entertain a motion to move one way or the other.
Move to approve the going forward with annexation.
Thank you, Councilman White.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilman Burdick. We have a motion by Councilman White and a second by Councilman Burdick. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. You did great. We have our good friend with us, our CEO of Unibasin Healthcare, Jim Marshall. Welcome. Why don't you, I don't know who's going to handle the conversation as we move on to our next discussion on the Aquatic Center, whether that's going to be you and Ryan together or one of you first and then the other.
If you want, go ahead.
Why don't you come on up, Jim? And
I was invited to come attend the meeting, I was invited to come speak. I appreciate the preparation time.
You had prepared for the we're here, so.
No, that's good. Yeah, this has been a great project. We had a great opportunity. The prior CEO was here, Brad LeBaron, along with a lot of other great individuals in the city were able to come together and find a way to build the aquatic center, including the city and others. When this really got off the ground, it was kind of initially it started based on the history I've heard with Brad LeBaron, Kyle Snow coming together and saying, hey, along with Dr. Greg Staker saying, this is a really important project for the community. I think at the time the city was looking to build a new pool, but I think the scale, the scope was quite a bit smaller. And I believe that they were looking to say, we need to find some seed money that we can use to help kind of get this off the ground and try to build something that would be different than maybe what was initially had planned. And so as they got together, they were willing to commit to $500,000 towards helping to build this project. And so as things progressed and funds were generated, they were able to generate enough to make this a reality for the community, which I believe is a huge positive for the community. I know for us in trying to recruit people to the community, physicians, other professionals, having something like this along with the schools, the other businesses, really makes a big difference in our ability to recruit and bring people to the community. Initially, when this was ongoing, we never really had the discussion of a possibility of some naming rights or an opportunity to maybe have a name on the building. It wasn't really until we had seen Crescent Point, they had the outdoor pool. That was part of it. We said, hey, this may be an opportunity for us to go and approach the city and see if they would be willing to have the discussion of the possibility of the hospital participating in that as well. To the best of our knowledge, I believe we were the highest sponsor in helping this project from a local business perspective, not from the city, maybe not from other governmental entities such as the county, but from a private business and industry perspective. And so we wanted to just put this in front of the council to request consideration of having some naming opportunities within the pool, where we could have, the Winnipeg Basin Healthcare indoor pool, possibly located on the interior of the pool, as well as we'd like to request having that on the exterior, kind of like Crescent Point has for the outdoor pool. So we want to put that in front of you today and just request your consideration and see if you have any questions for us today.
You did a good job. Just show you some of the options that kind of they came up with. Here's just just the name on the wall. One, putting it as an indoor pool, maybe a little bit bigger. So there's kind of three different options on the inside. This one, here's what we have on the outside. Just kind of zoom into some of these so we can kind of zoom in.
That's the south wall there, correct?
Could be the east facing.
So,
No.
yep, so this is the south one currently. This is the west, and that's where Crescent Point is at. And then this is the east side. You kind of see what they're proposing is maybe putting it out there. And then there's one other picture here, same kind of picture, just on that side right there, so.
Does that would say indoor pool underneath that?
Yeah,
Kind of similar to what, the other side, Crescent Point outdoor pool, we're looking at kind of the same thing on the other side of the building, just to kind of have an exterior presence as well, very similar to that.
So Crescent Point outdoor pool. That's what this one is. So, anyway, so that's kind of the options. We do have a few things we do have on the inside. We have the banner wall that we have that those are so we're not, the only spot we have is in Crescent Point. So we have Crescent Point, we have strata over the party rooms, and we have the banners that are on the south wall. So it's not out of question of having something there. It depends on to what extent. We do have our donation wall that we have there in the lobby that kind of displays how much. So anyway, there is different options. One thing, as we've talked on staff, you may consider is how long, if it's the length of the time, or, and I don't know whether you talked about it on your side, we hadn't talked about that. But inside the banners, they're 10-year. So that was the deal with the inside banners, was a 10-year commitment to have them up and then to be able to have them renew at that point. So however that works, we just kind of added extra pieces as we've had some internal discussions. So anyway.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it very much. On behalf of the council, I guess as the longest councilman on the council, I was involved very heavily in the fundraising for the Aquatic Center, and I really appreciate Basin Healthcare's contribution. That really was a seed money that helped push forward and perpetuate, the great fundraising that took place there. We're very grateful for that, and also, K&K right behind you, they participated in that as well, as did others in this room. So it's been a great community, event. I personally feel very strongly that I think this would be appropriate. The Crescent Point outdoor pool, at the time when we pushed that forward, that was important to them, that they have that naming right on the outside. I think at that time, the political landscape at that time, maybe it wasn't necessarily the wish and desire of Basin Healthcare, but as it is now, I think it entirely appropriate, in my opinion, that we would consider pushing that forward. I know there is not a time limit necessarily on the outdoor pool that I'm aware of.
I'll have to look at the contract. I came up and we didn't pull that contract at this point. So.
We had worked on that. I had involvement. I don't remember a time limit, but I guess my consideration I'd share at the council is I would consider that we would consider putting their name on the indoor pool both in and out, and I'd imagine Uinta Basin Health Corps would pay for the cost of the signage to get that done. With the same stipulations that are intact for Crescent Point. If there is a 10-year, a 10-year, if there was a 15, a 15, if there wasn't one, then there wouldn't be one. That would be my suggestion. But I'd
Or
Be
we
interested
should
in-
maybe correct that error if there wasn't. I agree too that it, being on the early meetings, they not only helped finance, but they hosted lots of the early committee meetings at the facility, which were really generous. I think they were very instrumental. I was just asking the other day if it's being utilized as much. And I don't think it is what, was anticipated for rehabilitation and those type of things. But they were very instrumental in it. There's no doubt in my mind. I would agree with our acting mayor that it should be. But if we don't have a time limit, we should somehow get that worked out. It's pretty rare that there isn't a time limit on those, so that would be my thoughts there.
I agree with the hospital instrumental in this. And, the hospital supports so much for the city, and, of course, it goes both ways, I mean, they're a very good partner for the city. So I'm in full support of naming the indoor pool on the inside. I have a little bit of hesitation as to putting it on the outside because that almost indicates that the name of the pool is the Uinta Basin Healthcare Pool, even though it just says indoor pool. You take these businesses that have made other contributions, like Crescent Point and Strata and others and people. They weren't necessarily donating to the Uinta Basin Healthcare Pool. They were donating to the Roosevelt Aquatic Center. So it would kind of mislead people who don't know, that it is the, Uinta Basin Healthcare Pool, which I don't think is fair to those that donated before. But I think definitely a major sign or recognition on the inside, or even a smaller one on the outside that's below the Roosevelt City Pool, because basically it's Roosevelt City Pool. Well, it wouldn't have happened without the Roosevelt City, even though it was, it was pushed greatly with the hospital and members that work there. But that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I would agree with Joe on the outside. I think it's great that, I think it's a wonderful thing to put your name on the indoor pool. And I wonder if maybe, and I would like to see your name on the outside too, but as long as we can let the community see and recognize it as the Roosevelt City Pool. The images that you showed before, it looked like Roosevelt City, we were a little circle and then we had that.
All that we have on the outside, we don't have it named
Right.
On this side. We just have the logo on the.
So,
on the south.
so we do have that on the
We have
south
this,
facing
But
wall.
on the east wall, we don't have, other than the logo, and we added those after.
Okay.
Well, this is the only place that has it, so.
So I hadn't really considered that we already have that up there. That kind of clarifies the confusion, in my opinion. So I'm okay with proceeding on the outside. But I do see what Joe's saying.
Have that on this side and have it underneath.
Yeah, and that's east facing, so.
Because if you're approaching it, you approach from the east side. Well, we don't have a lot of, we put up this in the original design. It didn't even have the logo there, but we thought, we probably ought to have something, so.
Is that, can you give us some relativity to scalability there? What are we looking at size-wise with the Roosevelt City, and what are we looking at with Uinta Basin Healthcare's logo there?
Well, I can give it size-wise on this one. To give a perspective, these are 12 to 14-inch letters. To give that size-wise, these are between 12 and 14-inch letters. So this is probably 5 feet, maybe 4, something like that.
Turn against the door.
So
Is that the same size, round Roosevelt City logo on the east
yes,
and the
both of them
south?
are the same size.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, so yeah, about 5 feet. I would guess that the logo is about 5 feet in diameter.
You know, with seeing the presentation of the whole building with Crescent Point on the other side and Roosevelt City pool on the front of, on the south facing side of that building, I would be okay with doing something like that. But I completely understand what Joe's saying too, but I'm okay either way.
You know, another idea, we could call it a wellness, and I think they got a grant for that, and they could just contribute the rest of it. So we could call it a wellness center, and I think they had a grant, we could put Newfield underneath and take the rest of that money. We could have a whole great project, and we just. How much more money you got?
It's gonna take more than a minute.
I thought the indoor ones, it should be a substantial, I like. The first one I didn't like that you showed, but the second or third one for the indoor would be real critical that it's very visible in there, so.
These ones here, this is what you're talking
I
about.
like the third one the very most.
This
there.
one, I think it's
Personally,
just I think it's the size that they presented there. It fits the same wall. Okay, this one just zoom out a little bit. If we did the indoor, we could look at seeing what the stratus size is and matching similar in size, so this doesn't, because that would be the next.
Is
size.
Strata's inside the pool or is it out over
No,
the?
Stratus this is the east wall, Stratus is on the north wall. Oh, just above the party. So, that would be a consideration as far as size wise. This wall has plenty of space.
I think getting the proportion is the way to approach it. You know, if you look at the Crescent Point side, unfortunately, the Crescent Point logo is so small that it's swallowed up on that wall, and it's hard to see it. If you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't even see their brand there. So I think as we look and talk of putting Uinta Basin Healthcare on the east side of the building, in my mind, having their big U proportionate to the Roosevelt City to some extent makes sense, so that it looks nice and symmetrical and not that one's eating the other. You know, that it's has a good curb appeal. But I think we can certainly find out. We have a lot of good people that can help us model what that ought to look like.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
in reality.
I think we're all in agreement that we want to do this. And can we move forward with saying, yes, we want to do this, and let's still work on sizes and you know, those kind of things.
I think the other discussion when we did Crescent Points, if the cities is 12, but let's say if the cities is 12, Crescent Point is 10. Because they were 2 point size in size of letters, they were that much. And I think this is just, I think it's, your picture's kind of sideways, but there. So that might be a consideration that do you want the lettering here to be the size of Roosevelt's, the size of Crescent Point's? The U obviously along being bigger. Crescent Point just had that small little thing up there, their letters.
Well, I think we're all in agreement, and we should be able to make like the final, have a choice in the final agreements how it's done. So I think they should be recognized.
One of the great things about being mayor pro tem is you can make a motion. I'm gonna make a motion.
I'd like to just restate.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm not comfortable with the way that is. I would like to see Roosevelt City, even if it was aquatic center, just reaffirming that that's what we donated to. That's what the Uinta Basin Healthcare Pool donated to, was the aquatic center. People didn't donate to the Uinta Basin Healthcare Pool. This was a controversial pool anyway. And that's all. I have no problem, and I think they should be greatly recognized. I really do. But I just want to make sure that it's, and you're headed up, up the road, and that's kind of what you see. Most people turn and go up Lagoon Street that way.
On this one, would you want them to put on Roosevelt City? Is that what you're kind of talking about? If we had,
I don't know.
Aquatic center like we do on the south side, to have something here?
Yeah.
I don't know how lights are gonna work.
Well, I don't either. Possibly raise the Roosevelt City sign and then put underneath it, Uinta Basin Healthcare Indoor Pool. I don't know. I mean, it's probably not that big a
I like what Joe's
deal.
saying.
Let me propose a language addition here, and Jim, you tell me what you think, but having the Roosevelt Aquatic Center sponsored by Uinta Basin Healthcare or something, I mean, it's, in essence, that's what it is.
I think, from our perspective, we don't want to take away at all from the city and the contribution there. This is Roosevelt City Aquatic Center. We don't want to take distract from that at all. And just like Preston point, we're looking at that as being very similar. We don't want those to be, and on the interior as well. We don't want to be overpowering, more complementary to everything else that's been done there. So whatever makes people feel comfortable here, I like the idea of maybe carrying over what's on the south side somehow into the front here. It still really is predominantly Roosevelt City Aquatic Center, and then we're smaller, but it kind of shows that contribution and that support of the project.
The other idea is if they would just take the O&M, we could have it and name it right after.
Seems like a shoe account.
Partnering it.
With no time limit.
I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that we move forward in allowing Uinta Basin Healthcare's name to be the sponsorship name of the indoor pool, and that we move forward into some design phase and look at it and bring it back to the council. Also, that we look at the contract with Crescent Point and see what terminology is in there. That's my motion. And that we would.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And
I will tell you, Jim, that when this came through my email, I was a little nervous because I wasn't involved then. And I thought, oh, crap, we've dropped the ball somewhere, thinking that maybe that was part of the deal in the beginning and it hadn't been done. And so I'm glad that that's not the case, but I was worried.
We appreciate the support, we want to always continue to support the city and have great partnerships across the community. And we look at this as one of many that we've had in the past and one of many we hope to have in the future. So we're very excited about that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your consideration.
thank you. Appreciate the discussion by everyone. Let's move on to Resolution 2019-299, Uinta Basin Regional Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan. City Manager,
Yeah,
present
yeah,
that to us.
So at this point, the county is completed. It's a joint project with the region, Duchesne County, Uinta County Tribe, Daggett County. So this is region-wide. We're one of those members. We're a partnering member in this. And at this point, we're looking for a resolution to adopt the region plan. So that's it. If you haven't, or if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, I see that Barrett read the whole thing. So he and I could help answer whatever questions you want, and I suppose.
Well, thank you, Mr. Manager, for that brief report on that.
Brief.
Summarized 1,500 pages in 30 seconds. We're impressed.
So,
Any questions by the council? We're all aware of the intent of this study and where it lands us. We do need a motion.
I'll motion.
Motion from Councilman Baird,
I'll second that.
seconded from Councilman Burdick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Like the federal government.
Well, it wasn't the audit, but it wasn't.
And we got the report to read tonight.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to item F, a review of solid waste RFP. We're grateful to have representation from K&K here with us tonight. Thank you. Mr. Manager, will you bring that to us?
I will bring that to you. So, we sent out an RFP and we received proposals back. And we actually received 2 proposals back. One from K&K, which has been a successful service for us. They have done it probably, I'm gonna guess, 40 years? 42 years. And they have been gracious to give us a proposal on it. And so at that point, they have proposed on both residential and commercial service. This is, first of all, for a 2-year contract, and then with additional extensions after that. So that kind of give us ability of if there's something else or somebody else that we weren't sure of, we could try something out. They are the only ones that proposed on residential and commercial service. So if we don't go there, we either open it up or we proceed with that. So there is some price increase in the proposal. And so what I would look at and recommend to council is moving forward with them for residential and commercial service, and give me the authority to negotiate the next part of the contract where we start in on that discussion and then come back and have the contract, the eventual contract approved by council. So at this point, we're looking to say, we'll accept the proposal to work towards contract, and then contract will come back. So that's where we're looking for the residential and commercial service. So if that's, we'll read it and look at it. They have proposed on the different ones. They did, there is the current rates for the service they provide us. They do provide some of those city services at a discount, which they have previously done, so it's very similar. So much of it's very similar in what has previously been done with, if I'm not mistaken, it's a $2 difference on the per can basis. From 15 to
Just comment on, I just think we're very fortunate in our community to have such a great partnership with a company that's, I mean, they're the only bidder usually on things, but yet they're always so good to help in everything that we do and willing to volunteer. They made the donations to our community events and swimming center. Everything we do, whether it's business or private or our city, I think they've always been more than fair to work with and gone the extra mile and been fair. So I would move that we approve this first step and that you can work to get us back. That would be my motion.
Thank you for the discussion and the motion and the second motion from Councilman Laban and second from Councilman White. Just had a couple of things there, how much we do appreciate K&K and the good work they do for Roosevelt City and the citizenry here in Roosevelt. Is there a reason I'd ask for the council that we would just have a 2-year contract on this type of a service?
It seems pretty short.
Well, it would have, what our design was 2-year. Then if there was any other bidding that we weren't aware of or wanted out at this point, what we would expect is that there would be renewable ones and be able to renew 3-year ones like we have in the past. We've had, I think it's past one had, did it have 2 3-year renewals? One? Just one. So anyway.
Was our initial term on the past
It was a
previous
3-year
contract a
initial
3-year?
term, right?
It was 5,
5
and 3.
with a 3-year. So at this point, we're looking probably at 2 with 2 3-year, which would give about the same length of time. It was just because we were going out, we're saying, hey, what we didn't know in the beginning is how many others and what happens if you take the low bid and if you're not able to have them, if we bid it out and we had them for 10 years, and we may have something we didn't want, we have something we know, which is good. So having an extended period of time isn't necessarily an issue at this point.
Yeah, I guess my question for consideration to the motion, would you be willing to look at that on a 5-year initial term as part of your motion?
I'm willing to look at it if that's what's recommended. I don't, 5 years is a long time anymore in our current ways for them to be committed
I personally,
financially.
I agree. That's, go ahead.
I think that we should keep it, what it's proposed at right now, just,
2, 3, 3.
yeah. I just think it's better for the negotiations that occur in a renewal process are good to happen regularly, I think more frequently than less frequently, just because we serve our citizens. It's maybe a little bit more work, and I don't know if it's a little bit more stressful on them, but I think it's just better. So that's my personal opinion.
Thank you.
I come at it from the point of protecting the contractor, of course. And I don't know if we have anything in the contract concerning price escalation, fuel escalation, landfill
We
fees.
have had those in the past, but this would be taking this and then starting in on that negotiation, so I'm sure there will be some.
So that's something we
discussion.
negotiate every 2 years.
We could, or we could do that, but at this point, I would say, let's start with this and say, hey, can you accept? The real question is you want to accept them as somebody to work on the contract with or rebid, because if we're gonna rebid, we need to do that soon. But then the contract will come back for approval and have those details in it to present when we bring an actual contract. But we don't have a current contract, but we look at those things, yeah.
Could we ask the Kettles if they have a opinion on it?
Please.
We sent that in figuratively speaking, business as usual. We did cut, I think, we had some controversy about the second can. I think if I remember right, there was some adjusting on that. But what we would propose to do is follow the 2-year thing. We think we can manage. Then at the end of those 2 years, come back and negotiate if needed. Maybe a price raise. Seems like to me everything goes up 10-12% every year. Then at the end of these 2 years, come back and renegotiate that. If needed, renegotiate that price.
So to
Thank you.
you seems before the initial term was 3 years. Was
It
it?
was 5 and that had extension.
We've ran for the last 8 years under the same, what we have proposed here now.
I guess what I'm asking is that first, how many years it is on the front end, something that is
You have concern.
hard on you if we put it down to 2 rather than 5 or 3, or is it just the whole long-term thing that is more of a?
We want to be here for a long time. Okay.
There's pluses and minuses. One, the contract allows us to purchase trucks
Better for
and,
commercial.
and more equipment, where It too makes you a little nervous to go out there and purchase.
Could we negotiate that, just put that as part of the thing that when you sit down and let's get that, what's best for them too. I mean, because it is a big thing as trying to get commercial financing the length of time for their contracts. So that's a big deal.
So I'm going to restate your motion, see if I got it. Motion to approve and accept K&K's proposal as stated, and also allow our city manager the opportunity in the negotiation process to further discuss the initial term of the contract.
Correct.
Is that what I heard? Motion, so we have a second that still stands.
Yes.
So I have a question though. So if we accept their proposal as proposed as part of this motion, that means everything that they've proposed in here is pretty much locked in, right? In the negotiating contract or process?
It's all, I would say we have accepted them as the personal contract.
That's what I'm understanding. And these are their initial proposals, but it's not the absolute.
But we're not locked in on,
Right.
on the specifics of like price and things like that. Those are still negotiable or.
Prices generally.
I'm not saying that I'm unhappy, but by any means,
Price
and I
generally
do
comes
appreciate
out of
this
it when
too.
we discussed if there are other things that affects the one way or the other. So
Yeah, okay.
there are potentials for that.
We're just saying this motion is that we're giving the city manager the right to further negotiate with them on this initial proposal and then bring back a final for our, that's.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I just hadn't read this completely yet, and I just didn't want to commit to anything that could potentially be stated in here.
I think the only difference is there was a possible $2 per.
We don't, I don't understand, because that's what Randy sent over, that we're
There's
doing
a
this right
difference.
now.
So
So we
there
put
is
down the exact
that's a
amount.
discussion, because that's what's billed, it's paid, because there's a slight difference between the administrative, what it costs us to administrate, and that's why.
So when we say
so-
proceed as usual, my little numbers on there are supposed to be exactly what they are currently.
Okay.
That's what we get paid.
And that would have been flushed out as we discussed.
You're not wanting to take less, that's what you're.
Well, actually, the second can is less on there than it normally
Then it's billed out.
is. Right, so, yeah, so when we give you those numbers, we were under the impression
That's what you currently are charged.
right.
Or getting.
Right, so the $2 was kind of confusing, because
It's the difference between what we bill and what we pay. There's an amount of, with our bad debt and administrative costs and billings and some of those things, we charge an amount on top of them. in order to-
That was confusing to me too, so.
Good point.
I spent a lot of time on that.
Depending on where the number came from, that, yeah. Randy understands what we're sending bill for, and
Yeah.
we can understand what I am. Anyway, but that's where we proceed at.
Thank you. We have a motion and a refined motion and a second.
And I have another question
Okay.
regarding recycling services. So
That's
this
my
wouldn't,
next one.
oh, okay, so
With
this
this
is
one.
separate from that
So
one.
this was
Okay.
residential and commercial. They didn't list recycling as being recycling.
Okay. I say we proceed.
Okay, we're gonna call I'm gonna call the motion to truth on this proposal. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Did you get all that, Carolyn? You're great.
Okay.
All right.
Now we go to recycling. So we had, and John, you want to pull up the Recyclops? There's a web page that I have. Has a picture of what they do. So I'm just looking for the picture. There we go. Thank you. So Recyclops is a recycling operation. They did submit, they submitted a monthly cost and a weekly service cost. This is one that is a voluntary, the garbage, residential and commercial is a mandated service for all of our residents. Recycling is not, but they did bid that out. They are operating in Nephi, Vernal, Mapleton. Those are the three they listed as references. They've been operating successfully in those, but their method of service and method of collection is contrary to our ordinance. And we found that out in the process. So what our ordinance requires is that trash, garbage, recycling, any of that is deposited into a can. And their process is not that. Their process is that they will bill a annual fee, a monthly fee. Let me see. Okay, they have I think it's a yearly fee, and then they have a biweekly or weekly rate. So their biweekly rate is $9, and their weekly rate is $17. I can get you a copy of this. It was just basically, it tells what their process is.
We had some discussion about recycling recently, correct?
Yes, and we've surveyed the public, and there's been small interest there. We've heard from a few. He's actually come and tried to present to the council, at least got on the agenda, but didn't show up both times he came, didn't come tonight, so. But at this point, if we proceed, knowing that it doesn't fit our ordinance. And what I would recommend is that if you want to proceed with it, that we do the same, proceed with negotiating a contract, but at the same time, we have to proceed with looking at the ordinance to say, do we want to? Or alternately, we still require a can, and maybe they deposit those bags into a can, and then they can come and take out of that can. I don't know their business model that way. The trucks come, what they do is they have pickup trucks. They don't have nice, professional compacting trucks. They don't have those. What they'll do is they'll get on a Craigslist or something and hire people, drivers in their own pickup trucks to go around and pick this up. So you may be picked up by Fred one day, and maybe it's Joe or.
Do you know,
Albert
in
or
these
whatever.
cities that they do service, any of the percentage of the residents that do pay the extra for them to come and do that? That'd be something, if you could get that information, would be good to know.
So, and it doesn't cost the city, we wouldn't bill, we wouldn't require, it's basically whether we would approve them to operate.
I think it'd be kind of hard to get people
to sign up.
Yep.
But that would be on them. And apparently we have a young, we have a lot in the young millennial spot. Our demographics in our city is fairly young. So that may or may not play to that end. I don't know. But at this point, it creates an option. And whether we want to allow that, the question really comes is if you want to allow it, and two, if you're willing to change your ordinance to fit their business model. Because that's what they do, is they give a garbage bag, and you put it in a garbage bag and send it on the street. And that's something we haven't had in this town for a lot of years. A long time. Guess on how many years it's been automated and required that?
Thank you, John.
Wow, that's pretty good. 25 years.
Really presented that.
For 25 years, we required a can. And that's obviously a concern that putting bags out, dogs out, this is not a model that's what we have in our ordinance. So, anyway.
It seems like when we talked about this before, or somewhere I heard that Duchesne County kind of mandated that all the trash be taken to the county landfill. how does this fit in with that? And I would want to make sure before we even pursued that, that we're not
Sure.
doing something.
And I would tell you, their argument is that, because they're recycling, not trash, and so they would take it. That's what I would say that they would say. For me, I would definitely look if you wanted to on the county. I would be surprised if the county would do that, but we don't have other ones that are there to challenge that, and maybe they need to, I mean, if that's the case, then they would need to go to the county to get that changed.
Right.
It may not be an easy process, we're not set up for this at this point, but that's not to say that we allow them or don't allow them. That's really the question, so. They understand that it is in conflict with our ordinance, and I did give them a copy, so they have read and know that they can, is in contrast though. So they're aware of that and said, we'd like to present anyway, and understand.
We appreciate your presentation on behalf of Recyclops. Any discussion from the council relative to moving this forward at all?
I'm not comfortable with adjusting the ordinance in any way. Even if they did provide a can, and we'd let them be non-automated, that could lead into the next time the regular waste contract comes up, they'll be arguing, well, we don't need automatic, can retrieval. And then we're going back in time to where you have regular cans and people piling garbage all around the can. And I don't want to mess with that ordinance right now. I think if they want to provide a can that can be automatically dumped, I think that's what they should have to do.
I feel like I can see what you're saying, kind of moving backwards, feeling that way anyway. And I think this is actually a step forward as far as services offered or available to our public. I know when I was campaigning a couple of years ago, I had a few people that this was their concern, of all things. They didn't like that we didn't have the ability to offer recycling. And I think it's an important need in our community for those who prefer to recycle. And so I think, making an adjustment for recycling purposes only, allowing something like that, I wouldn't have a problem with that personally. And this is free to the city. It's really basically allowing somebody to come and have a business in our city. And to basically turn that down to me is contrary to what I personally believe. So, yeah, that's my feeling on it. I'd love to see this happen. I mean, we can maybe negotiate some things. I see here that on this contract it's for 1 year, and then they could renew after that 1 year for a 2-year term. And I think that's a great way to start.
And that's what they proposed. But again, our RFP was 2 years.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So it was the same across. And so that's the negotiation. Some 1 year is best, some maybe longer is best. And that could be, but that was the same kind of possible proposal.
So this to me is like pioneering this service in our area, which requires some, steps backwards to move forward. As far as with garbage sacks, I don't like that idea either. I don't like the idea of having garbage sacks on the side of the road and stuff like that either. But I think in the future,
Uber drivers picking them up.
I think it would pick up, and as people bought into the service, it could potentially move into where they have automated cans. So, and maybe not Recyclops, but another company.
Maybe this one. This is out of Forbes. They sent a few of them that have been highlighted in different places, so they have some out there, but it is bags. That is their business model into Uber trucks. So who knows where you're.
Well, thank you. Councilman White, Labor, any further thoughts on that? I'm gonna give a minute to K and K to give us their professional opinion on.
I would, I think we would entertain the idea to, before you go on, move on this very far, is to check and see what happened to this recycled stuff. I have talked with Commissioner Todd. We have talked to the haulers in Vernal. And Commissioner Todd says the things that are recycled go back to the landfill. We have about these folks, but we have a supplier of equipment. Local boy, many years ago, was Martin Spencer. David talked with him on more than once about this subject. And he says, believe it or not, they just go back to landfill. The other thing is the county ordinance is one that you'd have to address. The other thing is the haulers in Vernal hate it because they're driving down the road, they dump their cans, they go on further, and it leaves a bad taste in their mouth because there's these plastic bags alongside the road.
And people blame them.
We're not picking up trash.
And so before you go very far on this, our proposal is check into it. Just don't take these guys' word for it. Check into it.
Thank you. Well, we've heard.
I don't know, maybe you've seen in there, we did not submit anything on the recycling because of the county ordinance. We technically did submit something towards recycling to not because of the county ordinance.
Thank you for that clarification. It does sound like there's certainly some complexities that would accompany recycling of any type that way. I know we visited about it as a council. I think this is the third time it's came to the council since I've been a councilman. And it's always that equitable part is the challenge, of somebody being able to actually do that. I know previously the discussion took place on should there be a recycling center area where there's some big bins, that maybe 2 or 3 strategically located spots.
Where the cardboard, right down the Winterton. We have hauled cardboard away that's, big bales of it. Because they can't get rid of it. There's not enough money in that particular item, even going back to Salt Lake, even pay the freight to get back to Salt Lake.
So I can speak to that a little bit because at the last convention that we just went to, the League of Cities and Towns, I talked to Republic Services, who offers recycling services as well. And I brought up Ryan with, I don't know Ryan personally, but I brought up the Recyclops, and she knew Ryan personally, but I talked to her about the concerns you guys have brought up, that there's really no profitability in the garbage, and she agreed there's really no money. But she said that it's the business model, it's the taking it from them that makes them money. So it's basically the way they make their money is by charging the fee to come pick it up, and they might make a little bit off the goods. Yeah, it may be. Yeah, might.
By all means,
So-
if we can, like, as we talked about it, the conversation has led to, hey, sure, let's put another can out there and charge another $17 for it. And, hey, that's good.
Go right by it.
Right.
That's good, and that's not.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily.
That's not the disposition that needs to be presented, or ideally, when somebody signs up for recycling, certainly they would be want to ensure that that's what they would do.
As I was discussing with her, she said they do recycle the goods, but there's no money in that. So they don't actually, as far as Republic Services goes, they don't take it to the landfill. So that's, to me, it just looks like another business wanting to do business in our town. I can understand taking a step backwards with the bags on the curb. But I think in general, we're providing a service to our community that lots of people want. So I don't have a problem with allowing another business to come here. Would we get tax revenues from them? Just curious. Is there any benefits to the city other than offering a service to the community?
I would say probably not. I mean, if the vehicles are probably already, if it's somebody who already lives here, that vehicle's probably already taxed here, so probably not. Any additional there, they don't propose having any site or anything else. I would guess that, no, there's not a tax benefit out there. It's not that I'm aware of.
I certainly have some concerns with the cleanliness of that model outside of a can. I don't have any concerns with recycling per se, but the disposal of that, I've been in different parts of the country where they do have recycling programs that work really well because they have recycling centers in the town that they pick up the recycling matters, or the recycling stuff can be taken to the plant to dispose of. But I do share those concerns of cleanliness. We've spent a lot of time and effort in cleaning up the city. It doesn't matter what type of a bag sits on the curb, it will be disturbed by cats and dogs, and it will let debris out. And that's a fact. That'll take place. So that's a real concern. I would have a real concern with us moving forward with it at our ordinance the way that it is. And we would need to address the county and see their thoughts and feelings as well, whether or not they would take that. I guess to bring this discussion to a head, I would look for a motion to either allow this proposal to expire for this contract negotiating period. We'll look at it again in the future, or move it forward.
I'd like to give it a try for a year, so I would motion that we put a 1-year contract in place or start negotiations on a one-year contract. And of course, during the process, we could make if we could decide not to do it if the negotiations don't work out and to a certain standard, maybe. And I'd like to also look into Vernal. I see a signature on here, Terry Rose Rochelle. I might know that person, so she would live in Vernal if it's a person that I know. But if it's her, I could talk with her a little bit more about it. But
I visited with the Roosevelt City Manager about it, and he right up told me, he said, I'm probably the reason that Recyclops came to Vernal. And that, because he came from Kansas City and had spent some time in Michigan, I think. Anyhow, those places that he had lived were heavily populated recycling cities. And he said, I'm probably the reason. He said, because when we moved back, he said, it just seemed wrong to be throwing plastic in and so forth and so on. And from his perspective, it's working really well. If you visit with the haulers, you get a completely different idea. But the one thing that I didn't get out of him and he didn't know is what is actually happening with it. Yes, they're hiring people out on Craigslist and, like you said, coming around in pickup trucks, gathering it up. He said they're going to a small warehouse, bailing it up, and then you might know Aaron said that UB Tech is hauling it to Salt Lake. That's what the city manager perspective was.
It's a great question. I don't know that.
Just the Vernal one, just.
Yeah, the Vernal one,
Yeah.
yeah.
well, we can.
Through the truck driving program.
But
he
he
didn't
did
know.
say that it was working.
He didn't know where it was going. They do have that can-do crew over there, and they partnered up with them somehow, some way. I'm not sure the details of that relationship, but from his perspective, it's working really well. I want to say he told me that there's probably 200 accounts that they service, but he wasn't completely sure of that number either.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to, make sure I got it right, to move forward and allow the city manager to visit with Cyclops and try to negotiate a contract with them.
Could I add to that motion? Yeah. And maybe mitigate some of the concerns that through the contract mitigate and make sure loads are covered if they're going to haul them to Salt Lake. And what other concerns was there? Because Because if we can mitigate that in the contract, I think that's good. So maybe ensure that the loads are covered in the contract, put that in there, but that'd be
And,
my motion.
and I think it's law to cover the, is it state law, is county law to cover loads, right? Yeah. So I think it's covered, but we could absolutely include it in the contract.
So,
I have one question for them, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. I assume all the trash that's put in the bins is bagged. All the trash is bagged.
That would be amazing.
I'm just checking to make sure that that was what was happening, because that's what they're proposing, that all gets back. So I'm assuming, reading that that's a no.
That's
Just curious if that was, and to see our own, whether we as a society and group are already in that habit. It's kind of interesting, but I think finding out what is there, and maybe they have the ability to put in cans, or maybe they have the abilities to investigate those options. We won't know unless we ask, but at this point, keep in mind that their current model doesn't fit our ordinance, so.
so do we have a second to the motion? Motion dies from lack of second. Do we have a motion to move forward throughout this contract negotiating period and table this matter until contract is negotiated again?
My main concern with this is that we have to check with the county to see how they view taking that recycled material away. If they don't see it as trash and want it to be dumped at the landfill, then I would be at a place where I could begin to talk about it. But right now, I don't know that that's really something we can talk about.
What if we amend the ordinance to say pending county
Amend the motion.
clearance? Yeah, amend the motion to say as long as it's in conformance with the county laws.
I think the question probably is to the county and the city ordinance. I know
Yeah.
there's certainly some concern with that. I would certainly have a large concern with trash being on the curb, not in a container.
Okay.
So that's a thought.
Yeah,
But
well, okay, so maybe we, as an amendment or just as an addition, since I made the motion that we also pending, it meets county laws and city laws. And we do have the option in the future, probably won't happen, sounds like we don't have the support here to change the law. So if they're willing to provide cans as well, then we could do it. But I want to give every effort on our side to allow this to happen. So if they can have a can available and it meets county laws, and then the other things I'd love to see the service offered, so.
let me restate that, Councilman Barrett. The motion on the table currently is to allow the city manager to move forward negotiating with the Recycle Ops, that they provide a trash receptacle container in accordance with current city ordinance, and also that the county ordinance is satisfied.
Yeah.
For recycling purposes. That,
Yeah,
Get
I
it
think
right.
so. On a 1-year contract, set up a 1-year contract just for a trial run. But yeah, with those things, it's a long shot, but we ought to try our best, I think. So.
Okay.
That'd be my motion.
we've got a motion on the table. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of second. Is there a motion to table the matter and move forward?
I so move.
Motion by Councilman Labrum to table this issue for this contract season. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Burdick. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
4 in favor and 1 opposed.
Just a point to clarify, that we wouldn't come back to bid it out, because if it becomes 2-year or whatever, we would generally bid it out as a group. Is your motion tabling it 1 year, tabling it till the next?
The motion is tabled to the next cycle.
I'm just making sure I understood that.
Thank you for the discussion and clarification. And let's move on to purchase orders. I saw the purchase orders have made their way across the council bench, Any questions on the purchase orders we need to discuss with city administration? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to move the purchase orders forward.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman White.
Second it.
Seconded by Councilman Labrum to approve the purchase orders. All in favor? Aye. No opposition. So Councilman Labrum. Thank you. Let's move on to reports from standing committees. Councilman Burdick, we're going to start with you tonight.
Usually last.
I know, we're going to mix it up.
All right.
That a boy.
Excuse me. Attended the capital projects meeting this month, and I'm continually impressed at how those meetings go and the things that the different organizations within the city are able to communicate to each other, the heads of the organizations. I guess that's what you would put it, supervisors. And I think that there's a real, that's helped the efficiency of the entire city crews, because there's a lot that gets worked out there. Anyway, I think that that's a great thing that's going on. Also, do you want me to comment on the airport?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So, yeah, it's my understanding that they started the airport paving. They paved the test strip yesterday, and it failed miserably. So they made some adjustments and ran another test strip today, which was looking better, but I don't know that they would even have the results by this time tonight.
Does that mean to the quality of the pavement or what?
Right, the specifications,
It has to
the
be
air
the higher-
voids and the oil content and all the, yeah. Which is, FAA is extremely stringent. But moving that they were able to go ahead and begin paving the runway, it would take approximately, I believe 7 days is what they were estimating on completing the 2 lifts for the runway itself, given that the weather didn't, crash in on them too badly. So hopefully today's test strip goes well and they're able to start producing and get a runway open this fall.
Are they behind schedule or are they on schedule?
I'll talk to that one if you want.
Yeah, go
They're
ahead.
slightly behind, but because of site conditions,
Uh-huh.
they're not necessarily behind contract, but they are behind what we expected. That there was some site conditions, some soft spots they had to replace. So that has extended their time. So they're on track for their contract time. It's delayed from where we had initially expected it to be. If that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Burke and I sit on the Capital Facilities Committee together. He's done an excellent job of bringing everybody up to speed on that, so we don't need to add any more to that. I would add, I guess, that, just appreciation of the way that our city streets department have handled themselves with all the road construction through the middle of Roosevelt in the past month. It's been a very busy season inside the city, but Main Street, especially as we went through this past month with UDOT, they've done an excellent job of helping to assist and navigate that, so we appreciate them very much. UBIC is a quiet committee this time of year, and so is the Red Bud Run, so that's all for tonight. Councilman Baird.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilman White.
Only thing to report, went to the Parks and Rec meeting last week. They just reported mostly about the secondary water being shut off and getting everything winterized and ready for winter season.
Thank you. With the specification, clarification for that, is secondary terminated now?
Yeah, we
It's-
started to turn off. Yeah.
Okay. So
15th
question,
is usually when we end the 15th, the start of the 15th of April and 15th of October.
thank you. Anything else, Councilman White? Councilman Layton?
I too was with Councilman White, and I agree with Councilman Burdick about the coordination of the different groups in the park and recreation and how they utilize different equipment and their plannings and talking about shutdowns and when are you gonna be using this, and then I can use that, and it's just, I love the communication. It is more efficient and a lot more effective, and I love the camaraderie in there. There's not contention or not, I mean, it's just really strong. As we get the arts and the recreation all together working one time in the future, that'll be a good thing too. So, but it's really good. I commented to them, heard a lot of really good comments about the 3A golf tournament that was hosted at our golf course a couple of weeks ago. And the local people just did a lot of extra things for the state tournament that's never done. And food and breakfast burritos and just a lot of different things. And Aaron had done a great job getting it all prepared. It was a very good start for our community from outside people. The only problem we have is 90% of them house in Vernal or more because we don't have the motels to entice. And that's something we really, I've looked into those such things, and it's a heavy investment. And that's why there's not many here right now. But when we were in the Philippines in those 3 years, I think it was 13 motels were built in Vernal during that time. And we didn't have any in Roosevelt, but the Ballard, a couple of the Best Western and the Comfort Inn was built during that time too. But so anyway, that's probably one of the biggest downturns, but it's hard to, I don't see any of us running out to go build one, because we can't afford to do it and get a return. But that's a real deficit with us, and that hopefully will change in the future. But we're not like a destination point unless we're really hosting something. And then we don't have the facilities to host people. So that's,
I think, I don't know if this is the time to comment on this kind of thing, but that's not, I don't think it's the lack of rooms, maybe it is, but it's the lack of places, diversity of places to eat and those kind of things.
but it's a mixture, yeah.
Yeah, and so just if there was a room here, doesn't mean that they would stay in it, because maybe they want to go to a restaurant that we don't have in our town. So because Vernal is a little bigger, I think that's pulling.
Well, it's both, yeah, I agree with that.
So, some of it's the chicken and the egg, which one
Right,
comes.
yeah, right.
Seems like, if you don't have the hotels, you don't have the other, you don't.
Yeah.
It's chicken and the egg, and trying to do that. We have, in the last little while, we've had more restaurants, and we've had chains and a few of those, and so we're hoping that restaurant, that hotel is a big step.
We need a pizza rendezvous, because we've got lots of pizzas.
Maybe we start having pizza on these, because we can circulate through a lot of different pizza joints. Really good. I like them all. I've eaten them all.
Yeah.
This summer, so.
I like them all too.
Thank you. We appreciate that very much and good conversation. Let's give a minute to our city manager for his report. If you have some additional items you want to report to us tonight.
Sure.
Do you give me the time limit?
I think we got about 4 minutes.
Wow, thanks. The Halloween parade is coming up on Halloween, it's a good one. We're trying to get a crosswalk at 100 North, and we've asked UDOT if they could come and do a traffic or a pedestrian count on Halloween between 10 and 3. And so we're trying to get that because we figured that it'll justify a stoplight. We have hired 2 new firefighters and a third one to fill some of the vacancies we've had. So we're trying to keep that between 20 and 21 in the department, which is good.
You have their names?
What's that?
You have their names?
I would have before you asked, and now so, yeah, I won't even try to pull them off my top of my head now. We have elections coming up on November 5th, you're probably all aware. Ballot should be coming out this week, so watch for them. You've probably seen our public works, we talked about our public works and the work they're doing. We've been highlighting them a little bit. They kind of, in our last satisfaction survey, they were kind of beat up a little bit. And so we've tried to help people understand what they're doing and what their job is. But if you haven't seen 900 East over by the Timothy Trailer Park, you have to go and take a look at that. That turns from a jungle to a street, and we're pretty proud of the work that all of our departments do in being able to clean up. We're, one of the things I was going to show you, it's going to take more of my minutes, but I think it's worth showing you. We keep track of all the different streets we've accomplished, and just to kind of give an idea of all the different streets we covered this year with different products. Now the red and the green and the blue are different things we did to those, but you can kind of see on there just the vast number that we've covered and touched just this year. We add what we did in 17, and you can just see that we've covered a vast majority of our streets in the last 3 years. And done something to gypsum them, resurface them, somehow maintain that asset. And that has been a big thing for us. And so there's a lot left to come, but we have a few spots here that we haven't covered yet, but we've made a tremendous progress on that. And so, I highlight that one.
I'd like to just commend the city and the information on the reasoning behind that, why you chip some and why you don't. The website presentation on there, of course, I understood it, but I thought it was put together very well, how it explains how LTAP comes through and evaluates our streets, and they're on a moving schedule. So mainly, I thought that was very good public information.
Another one I would bring up, the project we've been working on. This is a public interest project, and just to kind of give you the status of where we're at. This is the cemetery when it comes up. I hope it comes. What we have done is we have a outward facing site that people could come to. This is the internal link, but we would have one that's kind of simplified there. But somebody will come, they can come right here, and if they want to know where, so first of all, what they would do, they could get this on their phone or tablet or anything else. They click on it to tell where they are. Now it's going to show me all the way over where we are, so I should click, but I'll move back. It'll take your GPS. No, it's probably not going to do it. This is fine. Anyway, it'll take your GPS, and then you can type in who you're looking for. So I'm looking for my grandpa. It will pull up where he's at. Okay. So there I can see and say, okay, here's the spot, and I can identify what's around there. So I can say, well, that's Grandpa Alvin and Grandma Jean's burial spots. And but at that point, you can identify where you're at, where they're at, and be able to find a link. And at this point, we are having a drone fly over. And so this kind of is in the works. But we have a very tight drone flight that will be able to see probably some of those markers, some of the headstones, and be able to get down to that detail. And so, anyway, it's one that when we asked what the biggest improvement we could do at the cemetery was, one of those was identifying so that the public could easily see the location of those. And we're there, and we would appreciate the cemetery and their work on this, and our CIS folks. And we've made great progress in this round. We've talked about the airport. Junior Jazz, we've just finished sign-ups, so it hasn't started, but we've just finished sign-ups. And if you haven't winterized your own lawns, it's probably time. The weather's getting cool. Our usage of water is going down because of that time frame. It's cool. You probably don't, the grass is probably not going to grow a whole lot more from here on out. And so anyway, it kind of gives you an idea. I think I've covered all the ones I wanted to cover there. So, okay, I think I'm good. There you go.
Thank you. Did a great job, by the way. We appreciate the good work of you as a city manager and our city staff. Unaware of any standing agenda items we need to discuss tonight unless anyone has anything on their mind. Seeing none, we'll move past that. Unaware of any closed session items, any closed session matters we need to discuss. Council. Seeing none, we're down to the final motion of the night. I would entertain that motion.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Baird to adjourn, seconded by Councilman Laborman. The motion is non-debatable. We are adjourned.